Welcome back everyone. Today we continue with the next part of this series called What If Future Gohan Was Never Killed by the Androids. Let's aim for 350 likes on this one. Also, don't forget to leave a comment letting me know if you've enjoyed the series so far. With that, let's begin. Gohan stood firm, his eyes locked onto the androids, studying their every move with intense focus. Slowly, he eased into his fighting stance, leading with his right arm. From the corner of his eye, he noticed Trunks struggling to his feet and positioning himself beside him, mimicking his stance. "Trunks, this is my battle. Leave now," Gohan commanded, his voice steady despite the tension. Trunks, defiant, held his stance and looked at Gohan with determination. "Please, Gohan, let me fight. You saw what I did to 17. I promise I won't be a liability this time." Gohan growled, frustration evident in his voice. "Before we left, you said you'd listen to me." He caught a glimpse of the androids whispering to each other and continued, "Now listen, I need you to leave. If I fall now, you are our last hope. The world can't afford to lose both of us." He paused for a moment, then added, "Now go." Trunks stared at his sensei, his brother, his friend. Realization dawned on him. Gohan knew he couldn't defeat both androids. Gohan was saying his farewells. "Gohan, please, I said go." Gohan spoke sternly. Trunks stood frozen, tears welling up in his eyes. He clenched his fists and slowly nodded, lifting himself into the air. Just as he was about to take off, Gohan called out to him. "Trunks, before you go, I want you to remember this," Gohan said, his voice softer now. "You will always be my friend, no matter what. I will forever be proud of you. And never give up, Trunks. Never stop fighting." Stunned, Trunks felt tears slipping down his cheeks. He stared at Gohan, absorbing his words. Gohan, seeing that Trunks was still floating there, urged him again. "Go, Trunks." With a heavy heart, Trunks nodded and turned away. He cast one last tearful glance at Gohan before flying off in the opposite direction. 17 sighed and began walking towards Gohan, gripping a sword tightly in his hand. He stopped a few yards away and pointed the sword at Gohan's chest. "Now that you're done with your goodbyes," he said, rolling his eyes at the word, "goodbyes, can we finally kill you?" Gohan grinned, lowering his stance. "Go ahead and try." 17 smirked and rushed towards Gohan, slashing the sword horizontally at Gohan's face. Gohan ducked, watching as the blade sliced through the air above him. Seizing the moment, he stepped forward, driving his knee into 17's stomach. The android doubled over, and Gohan quickly charged a large Kai blast in his hand, shoving it into 17's face. The explosion sent the injured android flying into the air. Gohan appeared behind 17 and executed a powerful scissor kick, slamming the android into the ground. 17 bounced and skidded across the sand. Gohan smiled, but his victory was short-lived as a fist smashed into his spine. He spun around, catching sight of 18 retracting her leg for another kick. She aimed at the left side of Gohan's face, but he quickly crossed his arm and caught her foot. Gohan began to spin, gripping 18's foot tightly as she flailed. Seeing 17 getting up and charging, Gohan released 18's foot, sending her flying towards her brother. 17 caught her mid-air. "You okay, sis?" 17 asked, concern lacing his voice. 18 nodded, though a bit dizzy. "Just fine. Just waiting for the 3 blondies to merge into one." 17 chuckled and then charged at Gohan, swinging the sword wildly. Gohan dodged each swipe with precision. He threw a quick punch, but 17 dodged to the left and delivered a hard kick to Gohan's ribs. Gohan winced, clutching his side for a moment. 17 raised the sword above his head, ready to bring it down on Gohan. The half-scene grinned and shot forward, delivering a bone-cracking punch to 17's stomach. The android's eyes widened in shock. He let go of the sword, clutching his stomach with his uninjured arm. Gohan caught the sword before it hit the ground. "You see, the problem with wielding a sword when you only have one hand," Gohan said, raising the sword above his head with the tip pointing down at 17, "is that you can't block with the other one." Gohan plunged the sword downward, but instead of slicing through the android, it bounced off with a ding. Gohan stared in confusion. Why didn't that cut him? Gohan thought. That should have gone right through him. How was Trunks able to stab him but I? Gohan didn't get the chance to finish his thought. A foot smashed into his jaw, sending him crashing to the ground. "Follow your own advice, you jerk," 18 spat, placing a hand on her brother's hunched figure. "You okay?" 17 straightened, swiping her hand away. "I'm fine, he just caught me off guard." 18 nodded and rushed towards the downed Saiyan, charging a large ki blast in her hand. Gohan sprang to his feet, dropping the useless sword, and saw a bright, powerful blast hurtling towards him. He raised his arm, firing an equally large blast that met hers, creating a deafening explosion. Dust erupted across the desert plain, and before it settled, a hand shot out and punched Gohan in the back of the head. He turned to see 18's cold, unfeeling eyes before her foot smashed against his calf, causing him to lose his footing and fall face first into the ground. 18 lifted her foot and stomped on the back of Gohan's head, grinding his face into the dirt. She stomped again and again until Gohan tensed his body and created a large explosive wave, throwing 18 to the ground. Gohan stood up and spat out the dirt that had collected in his mouth. 18 quickly jumped to her feet and glared at Gohan, who glared back with equal intensity. Gohan charged at the android, but suddenly felt 17's foot collide with his back, sending him tumbling to his hands and knees. He tried to stand, but 18 appeared at his side and kicked him in the stomach, causing him to roll over onto his back, clutching his side in pain. He opened his eyes to see 17 standing over him, foot raised to crush his head. Gohan caught 17's foot before it could smash into his face and pulled down hard, making 17 stumble and fall next to him. Gohan sat up, a large ball of golden energy forming in his hand, and hurled the energy into 17's face. The explosion sent both Gohan and the android skidding across the ground away from each other. Gohan slowly got to his feet, wobbling, and saw 18 charging towards him, fist cocked back. Gohan jumped into the air, avoiding the punch, and planted both feet firmly into 18's face, sending the android to the ground. He immediately charged at the floored android, driving a devastating knee into her gut. 18 gasped and curled up into a ball, clutching her stomach. Seeing an opportunity, Gohan floated slightly above her, raising his hand above his head. "Masenko," he began, but before he could release the attack, a fist smashed into his face. "Gah!" he shouted, the built-up energy dissipating as 17 followed up with a swift kick to Gohan's head. Gohan ducked and aimed an uppercut at 17's chin. The android pulled his head back, narrowly avoiding the punch, and threw a fist of his own at Gohan's face. Gohan managed to block the strike with his elbow and kneed 17 in the stomach. He then hovered a few inches back and swung his leg into the android's face, causing 17 to spiral to the ground. Both androids stood up and eyed Gohan, who had lowered himself to the ground. Gohan shifted into his altered battle stance and watched as both androids charged at him. He whispered under his breath, "Bring it on." Trunks watched wide-eyed from behind a large rock formation as his master battled the androids. The moment after he had flown away from the battle, Trunks had sprinted back to the wasteland, careful to conceal his energy so that Gohan wouldn't notice. Trunks grinned as Gohan landed a well-placed punch on 18's nose, but his grin quickly turned into a frown when 18 kicked Gohan away into 17's enormous energy blast, sending the hybrid crashing backwards into the ground. Gohan didn't get up. Trunks watched in horror as Gohan's golden hair returned to black and his aura dissipated. Both androids landed on either side of him. 18 knelt down and poked at the half-sen's cheek. "Huh, you'd think he would have put up more of a fight." 17 grinned as he charged a deadly ki blast in his remaining hand. "Yeah, and I didn't even get to cut loose." He raised it above his head, preparing to throw it. Gohan smirked. Suddenly, Gohan was on his feet, startling 18 and confusing 17. The half-sen shut his eyes tight and placed his open palm to the side of his face before shouting, "Solar flare!" A bright flash seared both 17's and 18's eyes, making them scream out in pain. 17 released the energy in his hand, clawing at his eyelids, desperate to stop the agony. 18 pressed both palms into her face, feeling an unbearable pain she had never experienced before. Gohan quickly transformed into his Super Saiyan state and leapt into the air. He rose 50 feet into the sky before halting and placing 2 fingers to his forehead, focusing intently. Trunks recognized the move immediately, the special beam cannon. Gohan had taught it to him a year ago, explaining that the attack could pierce anything, but the build-up time was ridiculous. When Trunks had asked how long it took, Gohan told him he had managed to lower it to only 2 minutes, but in a fight where every second counts, that was still too long. 2 minutes. Trunks looked back at the androids, who were still groveling on the ground, holding their faces. Will the solar flare hold them for 2 whole minutes? Slowly, 17 began to stand up, rubbing his eyes. He screamed, "You stupid jerk, where are you?" 18 stood up next to her brother, her eyes barely open. "Damn, that hurt." 17 responded sharply, losing his patience. "No kidding, it did. Now, where the heck is he?" Trunks stood wide-eyed as the androids began to slowly look around. He had been counting every second. Only 39 seconds. He knew they would find Gohan soon. Then they would rush him, and Gohan wouldn't get the chance to fire the special beam cannon. 18 scanned the air and laid her eyes on Gohan's tense figure. "There!" Trunks' eyes widened as she shouted, "Oh no!" Gohan's heart nearly stopped as he saw Trunks charge at the androids. His sharp eyes caught Trunks giving a slight nod before slamming into the unaware 17. Gohan's eyes widened even more as he realized Trunks was trying to buy him some time. "Darn it, Trunks, I was planning on them rushing me. I was going to fire the beam at close range. Gohan gritted his teeth, watching as his young friend was slowly beaten to near death. He had less than a minute left to charge, but Trunks was already on the ground, beaten to a pulp. "Hang in there, Trunks," Gohan whispered to himself, the energy in his fingers intensifying. He knew he had to be ready to fire the moment he got the chance. Every second was precious, and he couldn't afford to lose focus now. 17 laughed as he stomped on Trunks' ribs, breaking several with a sickening crunch. "Ah, finally! I get to pay you back for that little sword incident." He kicked Trunks in the side, sending him slowly rolling away. 18 sat calmly on a rock, staring up at Blondie. She had never seen him do that pose and was curious about what was coming next. 17. Blondie's still up there and… "Shut up!" 17 snapped. "I want to enjoy this." 18 fell silent and whispered under her breath, "Prick." 17 walked up to the nearly unconscious Trunks and stomped on his face, digging his head several inches into the ground. He stomped again and again before saying, "I'm glad you popped out, you little fool. Now I…" 17. The android turned and madly shouted, "What?" before seeing the shining spiraling beam rocketing at him. He tried to fly up and out of the way, but something caught his foot. He looked down and saw Trunks' hand gripped tightly around his ankle. "Let go, you stupid little…" His words were cut off as the beam burst through his chest. 17 stood there stunned for a second, feeling at the gaping hole in his chest. He tried to take a breath but failed as his lungs and vital organs had been completely vaporized by the blast. Slowly, he crumbled to his knees before collapsing into a growing pool of his own blood. 18 rushed to her brother's side, staring wide-eyed at the hole in his chest. She knelt down and shook her brother, hoping that somehow he was still alive, even though she knew he was gone. She didn't cry, didn't show any sign of emotion as she gazed at her brother's motionless body. She slowly stood up and looked over to where Gohan was picking up the unconscious Trunks. Gohan noticed her gaze and glared back. Why isn't she upset? Gohan wondered. I just killed her brother. How is she so calm? 18 took a deep breath before saying very calmly, "You killed my brother." Gohan only stared at her as he held Trunks in his arms. 18 took in another deep breath before she said, "Now I will kill you." She bolted at him with such speed that Gohan barely saw her fist before it smashed into his face. The half Saiyan released Trunks and skidded across the ground awkwardly. He came to a stop and quickly jumped to his feet. 18 appeared at his side, planting her foot across his face and sending him spiraling into the air. She shot to his left and dug an elbow into his side, slamming him to the ground hard. Gohan stood up shakily and shot towards the remaining android, fist cocked back. 18 easily closed the distance between them and threw a punch at Gohan's head. The half-Saiyan dodged to the right and smashed his fist into her ribs. 18 gasped and pulled back, holding her side. Gohan rushed towards her, not letting up, and swung his leg at her other side. 18 growled and caught the leg underneath her armpit. She lifted her other arm and smashed her elbow down onto Gohan's leg, breaking it. Gohan screamed as he felt his leg shatter. 18 released the damaged limb and shot into Gohan, punching him in the gut with a force so powerful it could topple a mansion. Gohan's eyes bulged out of their sockets as he doubled over, clutching his stomach. 18 clamped her hands together over her head and smashed them down onto Gohan's back, causing him to crater face first into the ground. Gohan struggled to push himself to his hands and knees, but failed, his battered body unable to comply. Darn it, he thought. I put too much energy into the special beam cannon. He quickly collapsed to the ground, his hair fading to black and his aura dying down. Gohan put all his remaining power into simply opening his eyes. He saw 18's feet touch down next to his face. She took light breaths as she aimed her open palm down at Gohan, charging her photon beam. "Goodbye, son of Goku," she muttered, preparing to fire. Suddenly, a small blast hit the android's shoulder and exploded. 18 blinked a few times, stunned, before turning her head and seeing Trunks several feet away. He was on his knees, bruises covering every inch of his body, his left arm wrapped around his chest, trying to lessen the pain of his broken ribs. His other arm was raised towards her before it slowly flopped to his side. Trunks fought to keep conscious as he whispered, "Don't," before collapsing onto the ground. 18 slowly turned her attention back to the crumpled form of Gohan. Her arm hadn't wavered, and it still held the deadly ball of Kai. She stared into his eyes as she aimed the death ball. She didn't move. Why isn't she killing me? Gohan wondered. Confusion etched across his face. 18's mind was a whirlwind of murderous intent. Nothing was going to stop her. Nothing. She blinked a few times after barely feeling the small blast. She turned her head and watched as Trunks flopped to the ground after whispering his small plea of "Don't." Pathetic, 18 thought. Why even bother? He knew it wouldn't make a difference. Why even try? She turned her attention back towards Gohan and prepared to release her photon blast when the thought crept back into her mind. Why even try? 18 stared at Gohan blankly as she began to lose herself in thought. Why had he tried? That energy blast couldn't have harmed me in a million years. Was that some sort of distraction? She whipped her head back towards Trunks to see his battered, unconscious body still lying on the ground. I don't get it. Why did he throw it? If there's no point in something, why even try? If it's impossible, then why do it? I don't get it. 18 glanced down at Gohan, who was still looking up at her. The look of confusion was clear on his face. Stop staring at me, 18 growled. Gohan continued to look at her, dumbfounded that he was still alive. I said, stop staring at me, she screamed, swinging a vicious kick to the side of Gohan's head. The half-Saiyan gritted his teeth as he felt the blow to his temple. He rolled over onto his side, his back now facing the android. 18 released a frustrated as she stared down at the Fallen warrior. Why the heck didn't he listen? He could have just shut his eyes and not gotten kicked in the face, but no. He wouldn't listen. He decided to keep on staring, to continue to annoy me. Why the heck does he constantly try to annoy me? She gazed at Gohan and realized that her photon beam was still building in her hand. Why the heck am I even thinking about this? I was just about to kill him. He's been a constant annoyance for all these years. How he hadn't died is beyond me. But now, he will die. She steadied her arm and pinpointed a spot on his back, directly through the spine. No one survives that. 18 again paused. She noticed that Gohan's shoulders had begun to shiver. Slowly, Gohan rolled onto his back, and 18 saw the light tears falling down his cheeks. He spoke with a shaky voice while staring up into the sky. I'm sorry guys. I couldn't beat them. I tried my best. I'm sorry, Piccolo. I can't fight anymore. I've lost. Gohan took another shaky breath before continuing. I'm so sorry, Goku. I know you expected to get great things from me. I guess I'm just not as great as you thought. I'm so sorry, Dad. Oh God. 18 rolled her eyes as Gohan spoke. Is he actually apologizing? It's not like anyone up there can actually hear him. Who the heck is Piccolo? Was he that green guy 17 tore the head off all those years ago? I remember he had purple blood. How strange. Maybe he was an alien. Anyhow, now I'm going to kill this kid. He talks too much. She was about to fire when she heard Gohan speak of his father. She froze. Goku, 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 Goku. The name continued to repeat itself in her head. She noticed her other hand tightening in anger. Her eyes widened, and the photon beam faded away. His dad. Goku, why is this affecting me this much? She looked down at her hand. Why did I release my attack? What about Goku makes me so angry? Why in the heck am I so bent on Goku? What the heck is going on? She tensed up. Suddenly, everything in her being wanted to tear Goku apart, but Goku wasn't here. Only his son remained. No. 18 shook her head in fright. No. He couldn't have. Why do I hate Goku so much? Jero, he couldn't have actually. No, I hate Goku for my own reasons. That's right. I hate him because I want to hate him. But, what did Goku do to me? Why would I hate him? The only thing he did to me was, he's the father of this fool. That's it. He fathered this guy. That's why I hate him. But, then wouldn't I hate Gohan? It's not Goku's fault that Blondie's been annoying me and my brother for so many years. Brother, he killed my brother. He killed my brother. 18 roared and screamed. You killed my brother. The golden light quickly returned to her hand and was directed towards Gohan, who had shut his eyes and embraced death. The blast hit him hard, launching him several feet away. But he wasn't dead. For some reason, Gohan was still breathing, still struggling on. He realized that she probably wanted revenge, that she was likely going to torture him just as they had tortured Piccolo so many years ago. His eyes shut tight as he listened to her footsteps approach his barely recognizable body. The crunching sound of her steps stopped, signaling she was standing above him. Do it, he grimaced. His tears long since dried up. No longer sad or angry, he just wanted it to be over. But to his surprise, he heard a different kind of crunch, and he opened his eyes to see 18 sitting beside his utterly damaged body, tears streaming down her face. What the heck? 18 saw his look of bewilderment and growled, "Don't you dare look at me." Gohan blinked a few times before turning his attention back to the sky. 18 was frustrated beyond belief. She wanted to kill Gohan. She wanted to kill him so much, but she couldn't seem to want to kill him for the right reason. Why? 18 struggled with her thoughts. Why can't I seem to hate you for killing my brother? I'm so angry. I'm so sad. I can't get over the fact that my brother is dead, but I can't seem to want to kill you for it. The only reason I want to kill you is, 18 spoke the thought aloud. The fact that you're the son of Goku. Gohan, confused, asked, "What?" 18 snapped back, "Shut up." Gohan obliged. 18 released a shaky, tearful sigh before standing up. She spoke slowly and clearly, not wanting to repeat herself. Listen and listen closely. I will kill you, Gohan. That is a promise. I will seek revenge upon you for the death of my brother. You will die, Gohan. and no matter what, it will be by my hand." With that, she blasted off the ground and flew away. "I swear, Gohan," 18 thought as she flew, tears streaming down her face, "I will kill you, but it will be for the death of my brother, for revenge and nothing else." Future Gohan's eyes snapped open. He quickly lifted his head, taking in his surroundings. "How'd it get so dark?" he muttered to himself. Gray clouds had formed in the night sky, promising a storm. The atmosphere felt heavy, and the air was thick with an ominous feeling. Gohan grunted as he pushed himself up to a sitting position, sensing that something was off. He glanced down, noticing he was now wearing his orange fighting gi. This puzzled him, as he clearly remembered his leg being shattered in the battle with the androids. He stood up, forgetting about his previous injuries, and took another look around. The landscape was still a barren desert wasteland, but something was different. The ground felt strange beneath his feet, and the familiar rock formations had disappeared. Everything seemed flat, and an overwhelming sense of danger washed over him. Instinctively, Gohan switched into his battle stance. Surprisingly, his lost arms seemed to have reformed, aiding him in his stance once more. Despite these extraordinary changes, Gohan barely registered them. His mind was solely focused on the impending danger. "Why am I so tense?" he thought, his inner voice echoing loudly in his head. His body began to shiver as the sense of danger grew stronger. Fear filled his chest, and he took a shaky breath. Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder, making him yelp in surprise. Spinning around, he saw Trunks, who tilted his head, looking confused at his mentor. "Are you okay?" Trunks asked calmly, removing his hand from Gohan's shoulder. Gohan took a deep breath before responding. Yeah, just don't sneak up on me again." Trunks chuckled. "I thought you said it was impossible to sneak up on you." Gohan managed a cautious smile. "You got lucky. Don't think it's gonna happen again." He tried to relax, but the sense of danger still boiled in his stomach. Trunks's grin widened. "We'll see about that," he said teasingly. Gohan merely chuckled and said, "Come on, let's get going." He turned his back to Trunks and prepared to fly off, but froze as he heard a blood-curdling tearing sound followed by a loud thump. The older Sen's eyes widened as a sense of terror crept back into his chest. He slowly allowed his head to turn back to where Trunks had been standing a moment before, and saw the younger Saiyan's lifeless body collapsed on the ground, blood pouring from the stump where Trunks's neck used to connect to his head. Gohan's eyes bulged as he stared down at his deceased friend. He fell to his knees, mouth slightly ajar, and continued to stare as the headless boy bled out. "What? Why?" Tears began to fall from the hybrid's eyes. A menacing laugh pierced the silent air. "Oh, look at that. The monkey's crying. Oh, isn't this just hilarious, Daddy?" Gohan lifted his head and watched as King Cold chuckled and said, "So this is a Super Saiyan? I find that hard to believe." That's it for this episode, guys. If you've watched to the end, then that may be an indication that you enjoy the episode, so please drop a like so the video could reach more people. See you in the next episode. Take care.